The sprint is on until National Signing Day. How important is it for the Miami Hurricanes to have their transfer portal quarterback locked in before December 20th?
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and contributor to allhurricanes.com. Thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We are available free wherever you get your podcasts, and we are available free on YouTube. So, as we know, Cam Ward finished up what sounded like an awesome Miami visit, but didn't get the immediate awesome results that a lot of Miami Hurricanes fans were hoping for. Because a lot of the Twitter insiders out there thought he's not going to leave without making a verbal commitment. Well, Cam Ward is going to be spending the next couple of days starting later today at Florida State. So it's looking like a Florida State versus Miami battle. Let's bring on our recruiting expert, our recruiting overlord. I'll also call him our transfer portal consigliere, Brian Smith, allhurricanes.com. He's my colleague there. And of course, he's the recruiting expert here on the Locked On Network. And I want to remind you guys that anytime Brian Smith joins us, he's brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. First and foremost, Brian, you've covered a lot of national signing days, including these last couple during the transfer portal era. How important do you think it is for the Miami Hurricanes to have their quarterback for next year locked in by December 20th?
It would be really important, in my opinion. I'm sure that you've seen, and I have as well, the photo of Mario with Jeremiah doing an in-home visit. Everybody that's a receiver wants to know, okay, what's the situation? Tyler Van Dyke is now at Wisconsin, for those of you that don't know. Who's going to be the quarterback? Are they trying to get a guy? What's the situation? Yeah, I mean, if you're Jeremiah, I mean, he's an instant impact guy. He's going to probably start. I would be surprised if there's not some kind of, shall we say, effort to get that done, because I'm sure they've talked to him about it. Like, if you're Mario, why, how would that not be a part of it? Because, hey, this is Jeremiah Smith. He's a rare player, blah, blah, blah. And then you still got guys like JoJo we're going to want to know. I mean, all the kids that are committed, Nikar, et cetera, it's important. And also, I just think it's good buzz for the program, because then if he's committed, let's say whether it's Howard or whether it's Ward, you go up to the podium, you're talking about your players. I don't know the rules on it because I don't know how it works with the sign, but I would assume, and this is a big if because NCAA does such a terrible job with all these rules, he can talk about them. You're promoting your program.
Yeah.
Hey, we just got a great quarterback. We're really making an effort to get better, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's important, man.
Sure is. Be like Andy down there and smash that like button. We are live, by the way. Guys, we like to do this every morning that we possibly can during transfer portal season, National Signing Day season, because so many things change so quickly that we like to go live so the information is always fresh. And that means the live chat is open. That means you should be smashing that like button and engaging in the live chat. Brian Smith, our recruiting expert, is with us. All right, so Brian, this is becoming an in-state battle now for Cam Ward. So Cam had an awesome visit to Miami, and it sounds like Miami, the staff is confident that they gave him their best possible presentation, right? They feel like he's armed with all the best info. We did as well as we possibly could in that visit, including the Prime 112 dinner with Rick Ross and Rohan Marley and everything that came along with that. But he is going on later today into Saturday to Florida State. How do you see this playing out, Brian? And, when obviously there are, Florida State, you could say, hey, look, they just nearly made the college football playoff and they went 13-0, but they are losing a lot of guys on that team where Miami is more of an up and coming spot. How do you see this playing out between Miami and Florida State for the most prized transfer quarterback?
There are a lot of moving parts here. Number one, your point is very valid. Florida State's a very junior, senior heavy team. I'm curious to see what kind of exodus they have after they play Georgia for the National Football League or elsewhere. I mean, even talking to Florida State, like the people around that program, they don't know. How do you play in that bowl game? Is there an NIL thing to keep a kid? Those guys, this is the new discussion. The guys that are like 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round picks. Would it be better if you just stayed here another year, improve your stock? We'll give you X amount of dollars out of NIL. Which guys does Florida State do that with? So he's got to look at that. Who would I be playing with? Because this is a 1-year audition for Ward. This is his last year. So Miami's got more guys probably coming back. That's important. On the other side is how much does the NIL end up playing a role? Miami, barring something I don't know about, and I'm not claiming to be an expert on this at all, Miami's collective is better than Florida State's. Is there somebody that's going to pony up on Florida State's behalf to get Ward? I have no idea. That might be the biggest thing. Without that info, it's hard.
Yeah.
But then the final part, I mean, Coral Gables, Tallahassee, lifestyle, coaches, all that, everything's different. So he needs to figure out if he would mesh with Norvell and his staff. I mean, he'll have to figure that out on the visit itself.
Yeah. Wow. And so, okay, one of the debates that's happening among Miami fans, Brian, is Cam Ward, he mentioned, and players don't always stick to this, okay? But he mentioned, I'm going to take another week to 2 weeks to make my decision. So that's right. Miami fans. We talked about the timeline before National Signing Day. There's also the timeline of, in this game of musical chairs, you don't want to, if you wait 2 weeks for Ward, you don't get him, maybe there's nobody left, right? So I think that's one of the concerns. Miami also had Will Howard from Kansas State for a visit right before Ward. And by all accounts, Will Howard really likes what he saw from Miami and vice versa. I heard he nailed his visit. Not only did Miami nail it with him, I think Miami was really impressed by Will Howard. So even if Ward may be option 1A and Howard option 1B, if Ward makes you wait a little bit longer, it's at a certain point, does Miami say, you know what, if we can get Will Howard right now, we can't afford to wait for Ward?
I had that discussion with multiple people yesterday. I've mentioned it in articles. Look, they cannot come out of this without one of the two. And especially, think about it this way. What would Miami fans say leading up to the game next year? Miami's going to host Florida State again next season.
Yeah.
If Ward ends up at Florida State and you waited too long to get him, he picks FSU and Howard doesn't come.
Yeah, he might go to USC, Howard. Yeah.
I mean, how do you think the discussion's going to go?
Not well. Yeah.
So, look, that's part of the deal. It's year 3 for Cristobal. They have to have a top-notch quarterback. It is not a negotiation year. And that would be a bridge year for Emory and for, I don't know what Jakari is going to do, but they would have another year for the younger guys.
Yeah.
I would, I'm just speaking on my behalf. I would go ahead and take Howard if he's coming. Like if there's no doubt about it, if like on Monday morning, there's not a decision and Cam tells the coaching staff, look, it's close. I'm going to need some time. If Howard would come, I would take him. You would solve the problem. Number 1 overall, you would help with Jeremiah Smith down the stretch. You would give confidence. You'd have something to talk about on Sunday day. And Howard is just a darn good quarterback. He's mobile. He's 240 pounds. He would have a lot more weapons to throw to. Nothing against Kansas State. They don't have as much talent out wide. He could do very well. Miami would go to a better bowl game next year. They would be a team that could possibly win 9 or 10 games. Yeah, I would go ahead and roll that direction.
Yeah, so on that note, on the field, like, because obviously Cameron Ward is more sought after than Will Howard, but how far behind Ward do you think Howard is? Like, how much of a drop-off is there in your mind?
They're different players from the perspective that, like, Ward doesn't run to get yardage. He runs to make guys miss and extends plays.
Yeah.
That's what, like, and he's more NFL oriented. Like, they don't want their quarterbacks to run because they're always worried about him getting hit and stuff. Ward just escapes guys, moves up in the pocket, shakes guys. He has a sense to him. Howard will take off a little more, but in their offense, and again, he's a big dude. He would plow over guys sometimes. He's like 235, 240.
Yeah.
So you would have a guy that, you could use the tush push with. You could run some RPO. Yeah. I mean, he's a big human. Like, he's a tight end. So they're different in that perspective. But because of his size, some people probably think, hey, I can't run that. He can go. So their offense would change a little bit. Van Dyke tried to run some, but he's not a runner. You would change your offense. And he, again, throwing to Jacoby George and Xavier Restrepo, possibly Jeremiah Smith, Chance Robb, all these guys, his stats are going to go up. Like, his yards per attempt is going to go up over a yard just by osmosis, I would think. I believe he would be a great fit in Dawson's system. but I also think Ward would too. It's just Ward
Yeah.
would be a little more spectacular. He makes some really awkward
does.
throws look
Yeah.
just normal. He does things you can't teach. That's the difference between the two.
Folks, we're only getting started here on this episode of Locked On Canes. I want to talk more recruiting with Brian as we're down the stretch to National Signing Day. It's less than a week away. It's coming up on December 20th. Now, there's some good and some bad at running back. One of Miami's verbal commits is taking an official visit elsewhere to a big-time program this weekend. How worried should we be? In the meantime, are we still confident about flipping a 4-star running back commit from a different program? So, folks, you want to keep it locked right here. We have the overlord himself, Brian Smith, with us. We are only getting started on this episode of Locked On Canes. I am only getting started on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy service in North America. They are the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you just pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll in. And guys, with basketball season here as well, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League. Prize Picks, this is what I think really separates Prize Picks from the competition. They even offer a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play, even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. Folks, at Prize Picks, when you select 2 to 6 players, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a couple of taps. You can 25x your money at Prize Picks. You have to check this out, guys. So go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use our code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and code LockedOnCollege, all one word, for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks is daily fantasy sports made easy. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. For your second listen and your second watch, make sure you guys check out Locked On Sports Today. This network has launched the first ever 24/7 streaming sports channel on YouTube. They never sleep at Locked On Sports Today. So check it out after you're done watching Locked On Canes. Brian Smith, we established this last week. He also never sleeps, and I've got my my cafecito today. I know Brian has been he's been drinking that Jiffy Lube waiting room coffee, as our guy Chill likes to say. Oh man,
no.
So we got news that is a little bit unsettling. That Kevin Riley, Miami Hurricanes 4-star running back commit. I will remind people that he's from Tuscaloosa County, Alabama. Okay. He's going to be making an official visit this weekend to Alabama. And the reason why this is unsettling is within the last couple of weeks, he had reportedly declined Alabama's overtures to visit and had told them, I'm not interested in visiting. I'm locked in with Miami. Something within the last couple of weeks has changed his mind. He's going to be in he's going to be down the street in Tuscaloosa this weekend. How worried should Miami fans be?
Well, I guess it depends on your perspective, and we'll get into the second part of this momentarily. But I mean, to me, that's writing on the wall. Like, I think he's going to flip. But the reason that it's not as concerning to me as it normally would is I think that the second part's pretty good. But he's a tremendous running back, but he lives like maybe 20 minutes from campus, something like that, you know? So, yeah.
I mean, he makes a wrong turn. He's there for an official visit. Like, how did I get here?
Yeah, there you go. I was just in Tuscaloosa for the Alabama state title. Everybody, the only thing they talk about there is Alabama football 365. They have no other interest in anything in that area. It's bizarre. So I'm surprised that Miami got him in the first place, but Miami does a tremendous job recruiting. The good news is the second part, and that Miami, I believe Jordan Lyle is coming back this weekend, if I remember correctly. I got to get on my date correct, but those players are almost identical. It's amazing, like size, style of play, and everything else. And Lyle is a South Florida kid from St. Thomas Aquinas. 6 one way, half dozen the other. But you just don't like to lose players. It's personal. So I would hate to see Riley end up at Alabama if I'm a Miami fan. But if you get Jordan Lyle, then life's still pretty good.
And that's why I always bring my spatula for shows because I
There
need
it
Mario
is.
Cristobal to pull up some flips. And I'm not wearing this Jaws hat by coincidence because I need Mario to reel in some big fish this weekend or over this next week. So I got the Jaws hat on, reel in the big one. I got the spatula for spatula season. Speaking of flips, any new chatter? Has it gotten a little quiet on the Armando Blunt front, Brian? Is there anything new happening there with Miami trying to flip the 5-star defensive tackle back from Florida State to Miami?
I think the news has just kind of been out that Miami's in the mix. Now it's just like,
Yeah.
does he do it?
Right.
I mean, he's not going to pick up the phone if somebody calls him right now. Let's be realistic. He's not going to take those phone calls. I think there's a really good chance that it happens. I don't know if Miami, can do anything else. I mean, he's been at the program God knows how many times because he lives down the street. He goes to Miami Central. So that would be a huge blow to FSU. They need D tackles. They need D ends. They need this front seven in general because they're losing so many guys. Blunt would play early there probably, but Miami would probably play him early as well. So that's just a gut thing for him. I have no idea what it's going to be. But yeah, do you really think Mario is going to give up on a kid that goes to one of the public league schools in Miami?
No.
An elite player? No. So I would be surprised. And let's be honest, this is a personal thing too, because Central's about as home for the U as it gets, along with Columbus. I would say those two programs. Mario went to Columbus for those that don't know. So that's kind of personal to him. I'd say it's number one, but 1B is Central. So there's a lot at stake in that recruitment. I haven't seen anything on either side the last day or two.
Okay. Neither have I.
It's just speculation. And I'm like, until I talk to I have no interest on message board fodder. So there's plenty of that. If you want that, you can go grab it. But I haven't heard anything specific.
Well, when we come back, I want to talk about not a 2024, but a 2025 Miami quarterback commit who just wrapped up a magical high school season. So there's so many quarterback conversations happening, right? Every Canes fan wants to know who's going to be our quarterback a week from now. We know who the quarterback is going to be in the bowl game, and that's Jakari Brown. And actually, let's spend a second on that, Brian, because I get accused of this all the time. We talk about the shiny objects here on Locked On Canes. We've been tracking Cam Ward and Will Howard's visits for the last several days. We don't talk really much about who's already in the room. People are like, why aren't you talking about Emory Williams, he's recovering from a broken arm? There's not much to say right now. Why don't you talk more about Jakari Brown? Brian, imagine if on December 28th at the Pinstripe Bowl, Jakari goes out there and has just an incredible performance. Does he give the staff something extra to think about in terms of maybe being the quarterback of the future?
Well, that depends if they've already got a commitment.
Yeah, true.
It's all timing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think based on having Howard then Ward in, they're determined to take an experienced quarterback. And this isn't a Miami deal. But everybody I have spoken to across college football, reporters, etc., everybody said the same thing. And this kind of goes back to the roots of coaching. These guys do not feel comfortable with very much. They're very thin-skinned. They want guarantees, which in football, that's all but ridiculous. But they just want experience. Brown just doesn't have it. Even if he had a great game, it's a game. Ward has played for 4 years. Howard has played for 4 years. You know what I mean? It's not comparable, apples to oranges. So I still think they would roll with the transfer.
I want to talk about Luke Nickel, class of 2025 Miami Hurricanes quarterback commit, who just won a state championship. And I know Brian was keeping a very, very close eye on him. I also want to talk about another situation where Miami is battling Ohio State for a player. There's been a lot of that going on. So you know what you want to do? We're not done yet. With our recruiting overlord, with our transfer portal consigliere, we are here on Locked On Canes. You want to keep it locked, my friends. And guys, I'm having so much fun this football season and now this basketball season as well on FanDuel. As the weather gets colder out there, I see people wearing jackets outside again. It's like 70 degrees outside, but they're wearing jackets. As it gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot here on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. Check out the numbers from Miami. They're favored against Rutgers at the Pinstripe Bowl. If you want some action on that, check it out. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. And folks, if you want to hear and see more transfer portal updates, recruiting updates, breaking news, you want to be a member of our Locked On Canes Insiders chat. I include the link in the show description below. You get text messages directly from my phone to yours and vice versa. You can ask me questions on there. We can interact on there one-on-one as well. Try it free for 14 days. Click the link in the show description below for Locked On Canes Insiders. After 2 weeks, if you like it, you can opt in. $4.99 a month. We give you a lot of added value on there. If you don't like it, no sweat. Just opt out. I won't take it personally, I promise. So check out Locked On Canes Insiders. We've got Brian Smith here, our recruiting expert. So, Brian, I know you've been spending some time up in Georgia for state finals. What can you tell me about our guy, Luke Nickel, committed for the class of 2025?
Well, I just wrote about this at All Hurricanes. He led his team to the 7A state title. And for the record, that is the biggest classification in Georgia.
Wow.
And that is also the state with the highest per capita rate to send guys to the NFL. So he's playing against dudes. He's from the Atlanta area. He's only a junior. They beat Walton, which was the consensus #1 team in Georgia, 31-21 yesterday to win the state championship. But before that, they had to win against Colquitt County, against Grayson. They're a team that everybody counted out, and he kind of helped will his team. They got a good defense. They got plenty of players. I'm not saying they don't. But Nickel threw for 201 yards. He had a touchdown pass that gave him the lead that went for good, and he also had a rushing touchdown. He's a clutch player, man. He's just one of those guys that figures it out in the moment. And Walton's got dudes. I mean, they got a quarterback that was a big-time player, et cetera. And they found a way to win. When you start stocking your room with consistent quarterback recruits each year, we're obviously going to talk about Ward and Howard until we can't, because it's the most important thing. But in the future, they may not have to. That is the objective with high school recruiting. Getting a player like Luke Nickel helps Mario Cristobal, Shannon Dawson, and the entire Hurricanes program not be in that position down the road. He's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in class 25. He's already committed to the Canes, so they're in good shape long term.
By the way, Chris says, hey, tell them that if Cam Ward commits to Miami, he could still declare for the NFL draft. It is true. Although I feel like for the way he's going through this process, I think he has a pretty good idea he's going to be staying in college, Brian. I don't think a move to the NFL draft is imminent. This seems like a deeper quarterback class this year than it's going to be next year. So it's probably wise for him to try to raise his stock even higher for one more year. I don't think he's going to enter the NFL draft.
I think part of that is, and I'm not picking on Washington State, but they're just so far up in the Northwest, they get no exposure. Even though he's in the Pac-12, you could make the argument was the best conference this year. It's still West Coast. Yeah. Playing in the Eastern time zone matters. Like it, hate it, whatever, it matters. Probably 2/3 of the Heisman voters live in the Eastern time zone. You know what I mean? Like all that stuff. If he plays well for Miami and helps them go, 10-2 next year, whatever, it's going to help elevate his stock, and he's going to play with even better players, bigger stages. All those things go into your draft evaluation. I don't think he'd be coming back if it wasn't for those factors. I know the guy's a competitor. I really like that.
Yeah.
I'm better than what he probably has some kind of under the line. Here's your evaluation kind of deal already. He didn't like it.
Yeah.
I'm going to go prove you guys wrong. I love that attitude.
I love it. And by the way, just so people know, Miami also getting a visit this week from potential transfer center Zach Carpenter from Indiana, who I think the staff really likes. He would obviously be the Matt Lee replacement who's going to the NFL. And then on the defensive line, Brian, there's another player Miami's competing with Ohio State with. It's this cycle. It's like I think Miami's competing with Ohio State, maybe even more than they're competing with Florida State for players. When you think about the Marquise Lightfoot battles, the Justin Scott flip, obviously the Jeremiah Smith thing is an ongoing situation. Miami's trying to steal him away from Ohio State. Ohio State tried to steal Chance Robinson away from Miami. There's the Jordan Lyle conversation we've talked about. And then there's a player in the transfer portal. Marley Cook is a 6'2", 300-pound defensive tackle, experienced guy at Middle Tennessee. So he's already beaten Miami. Right. And this is kind of a cool storyline. I mean, not that part. Him beating Miami was not cool for me, but Marley Cook has actually canceled an Ohio State visit this weekend to come visit Miami instead, because he just had an in-home last night with Jason Taylor, and he was blown away by the Pro Football Hall of Famer. So that's a pretty good sign that he's now trending more to Miami than to Ohio State, because this kid's pretty sought after, and we both know Miami needs defensive tackle transfers.
If they don't get one that that's a good one, it's going to hinder the program next year because they're not going to have enough experience at a critical spot. That's not any secret. We don't need to really go into that. If Taylor is already going in home with this guy, that tells me he's a good player. I will defer to him on the D-line evaluations. How about that? So, I mean, Taylor is as good a player as there's been at defensive end in the last 25 years. So he knows the position, and he's been a really good recruiter, by the way, for the Canes. If they can get that guy to go with the D-line class they have, they can get to a point where they're also at that position, like quarterback, not relying on the portal nearly as much the year after. Maybe you just go after the 1 5-star in the portal. If you don't get him, okay, we're good. Right now, they got to have numbers. They have to have numbers because Ruben Bain can't be playing snaps at nose guard and 3-tech. You know what I mean? I mean, if they wanted to, but he's better right now on the edge. And they had to play him at those spots and help beat him up. At the end of the year, he wasn't the same player that he was like the first 2/3 of the season. He kind of hit a wall. That's a reason why. Now they need Horton, some of these other guys to step up, but this is an important recruitment. And if they took 2 D tackles from the portal, I don't think
I'd like C.J. Clark and Marley Cook. Those are the guys that I want.
That's right. Clark is, for people that don't know, he's from NC State. Very big kid.
Yeah.
He's 290, 300, somewhere in that range as well. They need to get at least one of the 2 or somebody comparable, because you just can never have enough numbers to tackle. Think about this year. I mean, like Dean and some of these guys get dinged early. Miami's defense was still good, but it took its toll on them, and then they paid the price later in the season.
Katie brings up this point about another transfer quarterback. Now, in my mind, I think Miami is still very much focused on options 1A and 1B, and that's Cam Ward and Will Howard. But obviously, if you're doing your jobs correctly, you have to have some other options, right? Because what if the doomsday scenario, you miss out on both your top 2 guys? Malik Murphy, Katie points out, is in the transfer portal now. And this is someone I remember Miami fans having conversations about Murphy even during the season. Like, hey, what if he hits the transfer portal? Would Miami be interested? This is definitely a guy worth watching, right, Brian? I mean, not nearly as experienced as Ward and Howard, but Murphy did get some time as the first-team quarterback for Texas this past season when Quinn Ewers was injured. He's a dual threat player. Is this somebody Miami should kind of have on the back burner?
I think everybody has to at least consider it. Here's the wild part. He's been patient, but Ewers decides he's coming back. He's like, I'm not waiting another year. He's played a little bit, 6'6", 235 or whatever it is. He can run. He played in LA against top competition out of high school, heavily recruited. I don't know where he's going to end up, but Miami and everybody has to at least kick the tires because you don't know where these other guys are going to go. I mean, it's just numbers. I would assume USC and UCLA would be involved. I don't know because that's home for him.
Yeah, that's right.
But I haven't heard really anything about him. I mean, I'm sure even Ohio State, obviously they have a lot of quarterback pedigree. They would at least consider it. I don't know, but man, that's a really talented guy for somebody to maybe roll the dice on. I wonder if somebody will go all in on Murphy because they want a multiple year starter. There's 2 ways to look at this. And
maybe Ohio State does that, Brian, because Ohio State seems to be out of the Cam Ward sweepstakes. A lot of people just assume they would be the favorite. They seem to be out of it. So maybe Murphy's the guy that they look at because he seems like he would fit the prototypical Ohio State quarterback.
That was the first school I thought of, but I just don't know if he wants to go back home. He's an LA kid. So I don't know. But CJ was also an LA kid, and it kind of worked out for him in Columbus. So he's doing okay down in Houston. I don't know, but that's an interesting quarterback option. There's always going to be stuff like this in the portal too.
Yeah.
People had speculated if he was going to get in. Yeah, that's a really unique player.
Well, awesome stuff as always here by our recruiting overlord, Locked On Network recruiting expert. He's also my colleague at All Hurricanes, and he's been working overtime. He just wrote that article about Luke Nickel, so check that out at allhurricanes.com. Check out my work as well. Brian Smith, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Thanks to everyone for making this live episode of Locked On Canes your first listen. Make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you subscribe to our channel on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey, on YouTube, of course. And we'll talk to everyone. I could say we'll talk to you tomorrow, but who knows? This could be another 2-episode day. The news changes so fast. So we'll talk to you next time on another episode of Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.